afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today is a historic day for the people of East Turkestan. On January 19, 2021, exactly 2 years from today, the United States State Department made a bold declaration. The Chinese government is committing genocide, among other crimes against humanity. I want to take a moment to thank the U.S. State Department, led by former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, for their tireless efforts in investigating and bringing to light the horrific human rights violations taking place in East Turkestan, especially the genocide that's taking place in East Turkestan. So thank you. East Turkestan government exile, Olam Osman Yagma.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the East Turkestan government in exile, I would like to thank you for joining us here today for our white paper release. Today marks 2 years since the US government officially recognized China's ongoing genocide against the people of East Turkestan. We want to again thank the United States and all the parliaments who have recognized China's genocide in East Turkestan. Sadly, the ongoing genocide in East Turkestan continues into its 7th year even in 2023. The international community is failing to take real meaningful action against China's ongoing mass internment, genocide, and the enslavement of millions of Uyghurs, Kazakhs, Kyrgyz, and other Turk peoples in occupied East Turkestan. Since its invasion of East Turkestan in late 1949, the People's Republic of China has been waging a protracted campaign of assimilation, colonization, and occupation in order to make East Turkestan its eternal colony, leading to the ongoing genocide. China has ruthlessly implemented a four-pronged policy which has only intensified since 1996. Beginning with infiltrating, co-opting, and controlling East Turkestani Uyghur communities and internationalized. Secondly, they seek to increase the influx of Chinese colonists by providing economic, social, and political incentives to turn the East Turkestani people into a minority and to enslave our people by sending Uyghur and other Turkic youth to China's inner provinces under the guise of labor market shift and the better employment opportunities in order to easily assimilate them by melting them in a Chinese-centric environment. Third, they are actively working to eliminate a large section of Uyghurs and other Turk peoples through wholesale genocide, similar to the Nazi Holocaust of Jewish and others during World War II. Lastly, they are seeking to gradually re-engineer the psyche of remaining Uyghurs and other Turk peoples by treating them like indigenous peoples, to deprive them of their will to regain their political independence, to condition them to forget their culture, story, and very identity, and ultimately accept becoming slaves to the Chinese. As a result, East Turkestan is on the verge of extinction, facing relentless systematic colonization and genocide under the People's Republic of China's occupation. China's relentless disinformation campaign combined with an ongoing campaign of colonization, genocide, and occupation has kept much of the world in the dark about truth regarding East Turkestan and its people. At the time of the publications of this report, East Turkestan has been occupied by the PRC for exactly 73 years. As China seeks to eradicate East Turkestan's cultural, ethnic, historical, religious, and national identity through colonization and genocide, its obsessed efforts to whitewash historical facts and spread disinformation about East Turkestan have only intensified. Simultaneously, the PRC has ready propaganda to fill the gaps in its information, whether on ancient, medieval, or modern history and current events. The Chinese government's revisionist versions of the facts are gaining traction as the PRC's economic, political, and military power grows unchallenged. For the East Turkestani people, these developments jeopardize our nation's truths of history, our identity, prosperity, fundamental rights, and even our very existence. The PRC has fabricated its own versions of each of these ideas. If left unchallenged, they risk supplanting reality in the minds of the international community, including future generations of East Turkestans. This report aims to provide a tool to bolster the fight against disinformation on East Turkestan. As the representatives of the East Turkestani people, the East Turkestan government in exile must use every available platform to set the record straight whenever and wherever possible. This publication, for example, is an important tool for doing so. It is based on historical data and sources from other governments, civil society organizations, and scholars from around the world who have not shied away from exposing the realities in East Turkestan. Aside from providing a straightforward statement of facts, this report seeks to eliminate any hint of presumption about the issue discussed here. The consequences of China's systematic campaign of colonization and genocide, violation of fundamental rights, and the deprivation of freedom and independence described here are clear and intolerable for Uyghurs and other Turkic people in East Turkestan. The only way forward for East Turkestan is to regain its independence, which is necessary to truly end China's ongoing campaign of colonization, genocide, and occupation, as well as to ensure the fundamental democratic freedoms, human rights, and the very survival of Uyghurs, Kazakhs, Kyrgyz, and other Turkic peoples in East Turkestan. Unfortunately, the Chinese government has been actively working to prevent East Turkestan's independence through a variety of means, including demonizing East Turkestan's struggle to regain its national independence as so-called terrorism, separatism, and extremism, as well as infiltrating co-opting, and even controlling East Turkestan Uyghur organization and the diaspora communities globally. This report highlights some of these factors and concludes with a chapter titled Restoring Independence, the Only Way Forward, which explains why the East Turkestani people's fundamental goal of regaining their independence is both morally correct and necessary. The struggle to ensure East Turkestan rights and restore their freedom and independence will continue as long as East Turkestan and their supporters continue to publish and promote information that reveals and true about East Turkestan and what happens in the country. This report reflects the ETG's current contribution to this effort. Thanks, everyone.
Now, I will briefly talk about the land of East Turkestan and a brief history of East Turkestan. So, land of East Turkestan. East Turkestan is a country at the intersection of Central Asia, East Asia, and South Asia. East Turkestan has been under the military occupation of the People's Republic of China for exactly 73 years. East Turkestan is located in the center, in the heart of Central Asia. East Turkestan is a large territory spanning over 1.8 million square kilometers, or more than 700,000 square miles. East Turkestan is more than twice the size of the US state Texas, more than 3 times the size of Ukraine, and is equivalent to the size of North Sudan. If it were currently an independent country, it would rank as the 16th largest country in the world in terms of territorial size, and is bordered by 10 other countries, making it the most landlocked country in the world, holding the Guinness World Record for being the land farthest from the sea. The Russia borders East Turkestan to the north. To the northeast is Mongolia, including Chinese-occupied southern Mongolia. And to the east of the Jiayu Pass is China. Jiayu Pass is China. Tibet is in the southeast, while India's Ladakh region and Pakistan administrated Gilgit-Balochistan are in the south. In southwest lies Afghanistan, while the Central Asian Republic of Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Kazakhstan lies in the west. And now I will talk about toponym of Turkestan. The toponym Turkestan means the land of Turks, or the country of the Turks, and it was first used to describe the territories of the Kırk Covenant as early as 639 CE. The toponym East Turkestan has long been used by the people of East Turkestan and foreigners to describe the region. The term East Turkestan was used by the Swedish officer and geographer Philip Johan Won in his 1730s work, The North and East, part of Europe and Asia, to describe the areas of Skål and beyond, further emphasizing the historical and geographical relationship of the region with Turkic people. The term Xinjiang is a Chinese colonial term, meaning new territory or new boundary, and was defined as colony in an 1887 English and Chinese dictionary. The majority of East Turkestan's people reject the use of Chinese colonial term, Xinjiang, because it serves to advance Chinese colonialism and imperialism, and undermine the East Turkestan's people's unity and identity. Many Western scholars use the term Uyghur region to refer to East Turkestan with good intentions, but it belittles East Turkestan by implying that it's a region belonging to a large country or political unit. We ask everyone to use the correct toponym or terminology East Turkestan when referring to our homeland. The people of East Turkestan is a home to Uyghurs as well as other Central Asian, Indo-European and Turkic people such as Kazakh, Kyrgyz, and Uzbeks, who have oppressed who have a presence of more than 6,000 years in the region. The Chinese is nation, and that is Turkic people, particularly the Uyghurs. They is Turkestan's largest ethnic group. Uyghurs, these Turkic people, have any links with Chinese people in historically, linguistically, or culturally. These claims are not only baseless, but also devoid of any cultural basis. The Turkic names of the people of East Turkestan speaks of strength, unity, freedom, ancestors, and self-rule. The Uyghurs, Kazakh, Kyrgyz, and Uzbeks are the most populous Indo-European and Turkic people of East Turkestan. The population of East Turkestan is heavily contested due to the Chinese government's manipulation of statistics and the lack of accurate census data. The East Turkestan government in exile estimates that Turkic population of East Turkestan may have exceeded over 40 million people prior to the start of China's genocide against Uyghurs and other Turkic people in 2016. The Chinese government falsely stated that Uyghurs have only grown at 1.6% annual rate over the last 2 decades, which doesn't align with the high birth rate of 15 per 1,000 people on average. According to the Chinese state media Xinhua, between 2016 and 2017, the Chinese government collected DNA samples from 36 million people between the ages of 12 and 65 in East Turkestan, which is indication of the true population size of the region. As it is difficult to assess the true population of East Turkestan with a complete certainty due to limited data and no truly accurate census, we calculated rough estimates what the true population of East Turkestan might have been in 2016. Then China officially launched its genocide campaign. To calculate the true Turkic population of East Turkestan, we used the East Turkestan Republic's 7 million population figure from late 1946 and calculated the population growth over a 70 years period until the end of 2016 at an average of about 2.5%, which would have resulted in Turkic population of approximately 39 million people in 2016. However, if we take Mao's assertion of 9 million Turkic peoples in East Turkestan in 1949 and compute it by the 2.5% annual growth rate over the span of 65 years, the Turkic population in East Turkestan would have been around 44 million people in 2016. The culture of East Turkestan. The culture of people of East Turkestan, in particular Uyghur culture, has historically been shaped by its interaction on Silk Road with other cultures and civilization from east to west. The people of East Turkestan are perhaps the only people on earth who have worshipped almost all major world religions throughout the history, including Taoism, shamanism, Zoroastrianism, Buddhism, Church of East, Nestorian Christianity, and starting from 1960 CE, Islam. Today, the overwhelming majority of people follow the Hanafi branch of Sunni Islam. The history of East Turkestan. With a history of over 6,000 years, East Turkestan is a hub of ancient civilization in Central Asia and is a cradle of Turkic civilization, culture, and history. Indo-European and Hun Turkic people have lived in East Turkestan from ancient times and found many states and empires shaping the culture, identity, history of the country and its neighbors. East Turkestan, being strategically located, has been centered of many great power competitions between powers. Throughout history, especially over the past 2,000 years, the people of East Turkestan and their ancestors established numerous independent kingdoms, states, and empires. Throughout much of its history. East Turkestan retained its sovereignty, with occasional period where it came under foreign domination, such as that of Mongol Empire and the Manchu Empire. In 1759, East Turkestan fell under Manchu suzerainty. From 1759 to 1863, the people of East Turkestan rebelled 42 times and re-established their independence as a state of Yattishahar or Kashgar in 1865. In 1876, the Manchu Empire invaded East Turkestan and annexed it on November 18, 1884 as Xinjiang, meaning the colony or new territory. In the 20th century, the people of East Turkestan twice re-established their independence as East Turkestan Republic on November 12, 1933 and November 12, 1944. In late 1949, the People's Republic of China belligerently invaded East Turkestan and illegally occupied it following the assassinations of the core senior officials of the East Turkestan Republic. The East Turkestan officially lost its independence and fell under China's occupation on December 22, 1949. Thank you. Now we invite Dr. Memtun Ella for a speech. Speak about the genocide.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, today is a very important day for us because today we are launching our book called East Turkestan Was Never a Part of China and Restoring Its Independence is the Only Way Forward. On this special occasion, I would like to focus on the intricate relationship between the Uyghur genocide and Chinese colonialism. Let me be blunt and strictly speaking, the Uyghur genocide is a direct result of Chinese colonialism in East Turkestan. And this colonialism is something different to the other forms of colonialism. The Chinese colonialism is the settler colonialism, which is a distinct type of colonialism that functions through the replacement of original populations of a nation with an invasive settler society through gradual elimination culminated in gradual genocide. And it contains an essential and continuous logic of elimination and ultimately genocide. From this logic, we can see that without this colonialism, Uyghurs haven't or couldn't have been facing the current genocide. And genocide is direct the source and cause of Uyghur genocide, which is happening in East Turkestan. Let me give you quite brief historical knowledge about this, and which could be, of course, my predecessor speaker, my colleague, has already covered the Uyghur history, but I would like to point to one crucial factor, which is the Chinese settlers were less than 2% in 1949, which was comprised mainly of the Chinese military forces, their family members, and some few Chinese merchants. Only 2%. After more than 70 years, they have become an absolute majority, while Uyghurs and other Turkic peoples have been reduced to an absolute minority, and now facing extinction. During this 73 years of time, the colonialism, or Chinese settler colonialism, has achieved its goal to replace the population of the nation with a new settler population and with a new settler culture. 10 years ago, the name Uyghurs was still a stranger in the world. Apart from few politicians and human rights activists, most people were oblivious to our name, let alone existence. However, since 18, our name has forcefully and violently burst into the public space worldwide. It's due to China's unprecedented violence against us as the East Turkestan. It's the Uyghur genocide that has made us known as Uyghur minority or simply Uyghurs by the Western media. Our name is called differently. It's a kind of black humor or Kafka's metamorphosis to suddenly experience a change from nobody to somebody. But this somebody is now facing extermination to make nobody again through genocide. Yes, you heard correctly. Uyghurs are currently going through China's ruthless and ongoing genocide. From history, in particular from the Holocaust, we know that no genocide happens overnight. It occurs with an inhuman and dehumanizing agenda. The Uyghur genocide is not exceptional. It aims nothing but to eliminate all Uyghurs, not only in Uzbekistan or inside Uzbekistan, but all around the world, gradually and systematically. Currently, millions of Uyghurs are incarcerated in the Chinese camps, indiscriminately and unlawfully. In the camps, they undergo systematic brainwashing and the torture, forced sterilization, rape, and industrialized organ harvesting. Still worse, millions of Uyghur children are forcibly separated from their parents and assimilated into Chinese culture. And now, massive man-made starvation in the name of zero-COVID policies are perpetuating this genocide in a heinous way. All this evidence constitutes and meets the criteria of genocide based on the Geneva genocide definition. And there is a credible evidence put forward by international agencies and researchers that what China is committing against Uyghurs constitutes an ongoing genocide in accordance with the Geneva Genocide Convention. And the United States was the first country to declare the human rights abuses a genocide, announcing its findings on January 19, 2021. The parliaments of other countries are followed by non-binding motions marking China's actions genocide, such as Canada, Netherlands, the UK, and Australia. Other parliaments, such as those in New Zealand, Belgium, Czech Republic, condemn the Chinese government's treatment of Uyghurs as severe human rights abuses, crimes against humanity. Without a doubt, this genocide is unprecedented in human history. It's unprecedented because it uses the most advanced technologies for social control, is carried out in absolute secrecy, and prevents the world from stopping it and supporting Uyghurs as victims. While continuing with its horrific genocide activities, China had exerted its economic power, diplomatic channels, and political influences to put pressure on countries, governments, institutions, and others to be silent over what's happening in Uzbekistan. So far, these efforts are not totally ineffective, as there has been no decisive and effective action to prevent and punish the perpetrators of this genocide. if this alarming silence persists, are going to be extinct in the very eyes of the world quite soon. We are very worried about our future. We're also witnessing a very lukewarm response of the world governments to this ongoing genocide. And many governments have stopped China over its practices inside East Turkestan. And I can see there is a normalization of the Uyghur genocide by many Western governments. It seems that the many governments, politicians, human rights activists, others feel like they are tired, they are forceless, or they are weak to stop this unstoppable genocide. And now, again, it's happening in the very eyes of the world, which is, again, not quite responsive to this humanitarian catastrophe of the 21st century. And I urge the world to action to stop this genocide. Otherwise, it's too late for the world to repeat the same slogan, which will become empty and hypocritical. And this report that we have produced is a crucial document, historical document, for the world to understand the history and current political situation of Uyghurs, with the focus on the unfolding of this horrific genocide. And this document, again, sheds light on desperate existential crisis that world needs to pay attention to, and world needs to help us out. And without this help, the world will be the hands of the politicians, hands of the many governments will be stained with, in particular, the hands of the Chinese government will be stained with the blood of Uyghurs. And this is also the responsibility of the world to stop the genocide. This responsibility lies with the world at large. One government, not only one institution. It's collective. It's the responsibility of the whole humanity to stop this genocide. It's eternal responsibility. Nobody can get away with this responsibility. You can get away with this responsibility today, but history will catch you one day. Inescapable, sacred, and humanistic responsibility to save the people from genocide, which is the worst crime ever that it could commit in human history. So finally, I would like to pointing of our book, a crucial document, as I said, but at the same time, I would like to call for the world to take action against the Chinese government to stop this genocide. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us here today, for those in person and for those who are joining us via online live stream. As the previous speakers, my colleagues have already reiterated, the genocide of the ongoing genocide of Uyghurs and other Turkic peoples didn't happen overnight. And I will talk about why it's happening and how it's happening, or how China set the stage for it to happen. Since the Chinese invasion of East Turkestan in late 1949, the people of East Turkestan have consistently resisted against Chinese colonization and occupation, with numerous uprisings and sporadic clashes with the PRC and its occupation forces, as it is natural for any person, any country that is facing occupation to resist, as it is their natural right and duty to resist against occupation. The Chinese government, however, pursued a policy of co-optation and a strategy of denial. in order to undermine the people of East Turkestan's efforts to re-establish their independence. The fall of the Soviet Union and the independence of the Central Asian republics in 1991 fueled the desire for independence in the people of East Turkestan, resulting in a new East Turkestan national independence movement. And it was increasing to where it culminated across East Turkestan. More and more people were engaging in protests, demanding the right to be an independent nation and trying to exercise their self-determination. However, since 1996, the Chinese government has implemented a comprehensive policy to suppress East Turkestan's national independence movement and to prevent, as they state in their own top secret document from 1996, to prevent the East Turkestan problem from becoming internationalized. The Chinese government's top secret directive, document number 7, 1996, issues directives ranging from suppressing pro-independence sentiments to infiltrating and co-opting East Turkestani organizations and communities both within East Turkestan and the diaspora, as well as the need for wholesale reinforcement of military and security preparedness to prevent East Turkestan's independence. The directives also called for strong relations with Turkey, Kazakhstan, and Kyrgyzstan, all of which had a very large East Turkestani Uyghur diaspora community. Again, this was being done to suppress pro-independence activism and prevent the East Turkestan problem from becoming internationalized. I want to reiterate the struggle of East Turkestanis to reclaim their independence historically has nothing to do with fundamentalism, religious extremism, or Islamic jihadism. According to Israeli China expert Professor Yitzhak Shihor, Uyghur organizations, with the exception of the Chinese fabricated East Turkestan Islamic Party, has never identified themselves as Islamic, yet alone radically Islamic, because they recognized the fact that adopting and promoting pan-Islamist ideology would harm the struggle of East Turkestan's independence and threaten their host nations, namely the Central Asian republics, which were being threatened by radical Islam. However, in late 1997 to 1998, the Chinese government fabricated Uyghur Islamist groups such as the Turkestan Islamic Party to influence, hijack, and undermine East Turkestan's national independence movement in coordination with China's security and intelligence partners such as the government of Pakistan, Russia, Turkey, the Taliban regime, and even terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda. To justify its ongoing genocide against Uyghurs and other Turkic peoples in East Turkestan, Chinese intelligence services, in cooperation with Turkey and possibly others, secretly transferred some 20,000 Uyghurs from East Turkestan to the battlefields of Syria between 2012 to 2014. This gave China a one-stop solution for demonizing East Turkestan's independence struggle and for portraying Uyghurs as terrorists, while also providing the Erdogan regime with cannon fodder to use against the Assad regime, Kurdish militants, and more recently, even in Karabakh. Unfortunately, with the active cooperation of certain Uyghur individuals and organizations based in Turkey and elsewhere, many Uyghurs have been lured into this Chinese, Turkish, and possibly other countries' intelligence trap. On December 22nd, 2016, Abdülhakim Masum, one of the most prominent Uyghur leaders in Turkey, who spoke out against this Turkish-Chinese intelligence trap, died unexpectedly. His death occurred on the exact day that the PRC overthrew the East Turkestan Republic. We suspect that Abdülhakim Masum may have been assassinated. According to numerous anonymous testimonies that we collected from our diaspora community, including many Uyghurs in Turkey, many Uyghurs in Turkey are being coerced and have been coerced to go fight in Syria or to support organizations that are fighting in Syria or support organizations that have strong ties to the Turkish government. Those who refused were later detained and imprisoned on false charges of terrorism, according to the testimonies of some of these Uyghur victims. An audio clip of a former leader of a Uyghur human rights organization based in Washington, D.C., or based in the United States, was published online, in which that specific leader made serious allegations of Chinese intelligence co-opting a number of Uyghur groups based in Turkey, Europe, and even the United States in order to radicalize Uyghurs and suppress East Turkestan's independence struggle. We call on Western governments, particularly the United States, to thoroughly investigate this matter because we lack the resources and expertise to confirm these serious allegations. In addition to fabricating so-called Uyghur Islamists, the Chinese government has assassinated many pro-independence Uyghur leaders in Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Uzbekistan. Prior to the official start of the Uyghur genocide, a number of indiscriminate attacks against civilians occurred in East Turkestan and parts of China in 2013 to 2014. Based on a careful examination and review of East Turkestani resistance to the Chinese government, we suspect that these indiscriminate attacks were false flag operations carried out by the Chinese intelligence to help set the stage and serve as a justification for the launch of the Chinese government's genocidal campaign against Uyghurs and other Turkic peoples under the guise of a so-called People's War Against Violent Terrorism. According to Dr. Pablo A. Rodriguez, a senior lecturer in the Department of Defense and International Relations at the United Kingdom's Royal Military Academy at Sandhurst, violent resistance attacks carried out by Uyghurs in the past were never indiscriminate, and they never targeted civilians. Instead, they focused on the Chinese government and their security forces. Furthermore, the Chinese government has infiltrated, influenced, and co-opted East Turkestani and Uyghur organizations and diaspora communities all across the world, including here, sadly, in the United States. Prior to 2004, and this is confirmable by the fact that there is a lot of historical data available, all Uyghur groups in all parts of the world advocated for independence and referring to their country as East Turkestan. After 2004, however, Chinese intelligence operatives infiltrated and co-opted many East Turkestani Uyghur organizations and leaders, frequently using Turkey and the Central Asian republics, which have strategic intelligence and security cooperation agreements with China, to silence calls for East Turkestan independence. Unfortunately, this was not limited to Turkey or Central Asia. Pro-independence East Turkestani activism, even here in the United States, was met with an alarming pushback, often from leader groups claiming to advocate for human rights and democracy. In 2008, the PRC weaponized the US justice system by using a specific Uyghur individual who has extensive ties working for Chinese government and CCP entities, as well as a certain Uyghur human rights organization here in the US, to make false and baseless allegations in an effort to undermine the pro-independence activism of the East Turkestan national movement. And they succeeded in having Adnan's leader, who was myself, arrested on the false charges of terrorism. Furthermore, from 2018 to present, some Uyghur groups and individuals in the United States who have very extensive close ties with Turkey actively oppose and work to sabotage Adnan and the ETG's efforts for recognition of the Uyghur genocide and recognition of East Turkestan's status as an occupied country. One former leader of a specific Uyghur organization based in the United States publicly, and we have videos, urged Uyghurs not to use the term genocide, concentration camps, or call for independence. Another Uyghur leader from another Western-based Uyghur organization publicly urged people not to support the ETG in Etnam's genocide case against Chinese officials at the International Criminal Court. These groups, these Uyghur human rights groups, unfortunately, would not start using the term genocide until after the United States officially recognized it. Based on our research supporting data and countless interviews with dozens of Uyghurs from the East Turkestani diaspora, we believe that the PRC is influencing and co-opting Uyghur and East Turkestani diaspora organizations, mostly with the help of Turkey, in order to support China's defense goal of preventing East Turkestan independence. In 2021, a high-profile Uyghur leader of a Western-based Uyghur human rights organization told a group of Uyghurs at a conference in Turkey that he always advised Uyghurs to always prioritize Turkey's greater interest, regardless of which country you work for or receive a salary from. So what are Turkey's greater interests? In 2017, Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Çavuşoğlu stated at a press conference in Beijing that we, Turkey, see China's security as our own, and we will not allow any activities against China, whether it's in our country or in the region. Similarly, we will prohibit all types of activities, including publications critical of China. I am pleased to see our security cooperations increasing. This collaboration will continue to grow in the coming years. So when we look at this statement, and we look at the Uyghur jihadist groups, who, rather than fighting China, fought against NATO to demonize the Uyghurs, of course, fought alongside Al-Qaeda to demonize Uyghurs, of course, they are being actively supported by none other than Turkey. And if they were truly a threat to China, there would be no reason for Turkey to support them while it's actively trying to suppress East Turkestan independence. This collaboration, as he stated, continues to grow. Currently, certain Turkish non-governmental organizations with extensive ties to the Turkish government have been actively attacking the East Turkestan government in exile and working with suspicious individuals to undermine it as part of Turkey's commitment to China's security. While the Turkish people and some opposition political parties have been fully supportive of East Turkestan's struggle, the Erdogan administration is actively assisting China's efforts to influence, co-opt, and even control East Turkestani Uyghur diaspora organizations. In conclusion, as the international community fails to take meaningful action, China's genocide in East Turkestan continues unabated. Uyghurs and other Turkic peoples are on the brink of becoming a very small minority within the next decade. As the Uyghur and other Turkic peoples' population is rapidly declining as a result of genocide and forced sterilization and population control policies, the Chinese colonist population is rapidly increasing. If China's genocidal policies and colonialism continue, Uyghurs and other Turkic peoples will be reduced to a very small minority in the next 20 years. And it will cease to exist as a people, and they will cease to exist as a people within 50 years. Time is running out for East Turkestan and its people. The international community, particularly Western nations, that are truly committed to human rights, democracy, and self-determination must support East Turkestan's independence. The only way to truly end China's ongoing genocide and ensure the human rights, freedoms, and very existence of Uyghurs and other Turkic peoples is to restore East Turkestan's independence. The people of East Turkestan don't have time to wait for China to become a democracy to secure their fundamental rights. Nor is there a guarantee that their rights will be respected under a democratic China. In fact, following the US designation of genocide back in 2021, a prominent leader of China's democracy movement, Wei Jingxin, publicly took to Twitter to not only deny that China is committing genocide against Uyghurs and other Turkic peoples, but openly threatening Uyghurs with real genocide if Uyghurs push for independence. If governments, organizations, and individuals around the world are truly committed to ending this genocide against Uyghurs and other Turkic peoples, then they must recognize the root of this ongoing genocide, which is Chinese occupation and colonization of East Turkestan. They must recognize and support the right of East Turkestan's people for external self-determination. The overwhelming majority of East Turkestan's people have long expressed their desire to regain their independence, and this is evidenced by a 2018 petition sent to the White House by the East Turkestani diaspora with over 109,000 signatures, as well as China's own internal leaked documents of senior Chinese officials, which clearly state that the majority of East Turkestan's people have been infected by pro-independence sentiments. The first step toward ending the ongoing genocide should be admitting and recognizing the fact that East Turkestan is an occupied country rather than a so-called integral part of China, as the Chinese government falsely claims. The Sino-East Turkestan conflict is not an internal conflict or a matter of China's internal affairs. On the contrary, it is a conflict between an occupied nation and an occupying nation. As a result, we urge all governments worldwide to recognize East Turkestan's status as an occupied country and support the East Turkestani people's struggle to exist and to oppose. And we urge the international community, particularly Western governments, to oppose China's belligerent efforts to influence, co-opt, and control East Turkestani diaspora communities and organizations across the world. We urge governments, the media, and organizations to refer to East Turkestan with its true name, East Turkestan, rather than using the racist Chinese colonial term Xinjiang. We urge the international community, particularly governments, the media, and academics to stop referring to the people of East Turkestan as minorities, or indigenous peoples, or Chinese Muslims. The Turkic people of East Turkestan are still the majority for the time being. Furthermore, the political connotation of the term indigenous peoples undermine East Turkestan's rightful struggle to restore its independence. And lastly, the people of East Turkestan are not Chinese. They share no cultural, historical, religious, ethnic, linguistic, or any other ties with China or the Chinese people. They are ethnically Turkic and Indo-European peoples. We request that the international community assist East Turkestan in obtaining justice by supporting our case against China at the International Criminal Court, just like they have supported Ukraine's case against Russia at the International Criminal Court, and by initiating a legal case at the International Court of Justice. We urge governments to raise the issue of East Turkestan and actively push for decolonization at the international level. We also urge governments to help East Turkestanis strengthen their diaspora institutions, such as the East Turkestan government in exile. Lastly, if all fails, we urge the international community to intervene militarily, because historically all genocides that we have witnessed in the past 100 years were only stopped through the use of military intervention. As much as we would want to end this genocide as peacefully as possible, the fact that China is relentlessly continuing this genocide even in the year 2023, shows that the possibility of us peacefully being able to stop this genocide is at best unrealistic. However, if the governments of the world implement and do the things that we ask by raising the issue of East Turkestan and its status at the international level, by bringing China to the International Criminal Court, to the International Court of Justice, and by pushing for decolonization, by recognizing the fact that East Turkestan is an occupied country, then we may have a possibility of peacefully resolving the Sino-East Turkestan conflict and ending the ongoing genocide of Uyghurs and other Turkic peoples. We want to conclude that, reiterating that the only way forward for the people of East Turkestan, despite everything, especially despite everything that we've been through over the past 100 years, in spite of everything that we went through over the past 100 years, there's only one way forward to ensure our existence, and that is to restore our independence and our freedom. It is the only way to truly end the genocide and ensure the survival of our people. Supporting the restoration of East Turkestan's independence is not only necessary, but also the morally correct thing to do to save a nation from becoming extinct. Thank you. And now I'd like to invite our friend who has not only visited East Turkestan on multiple occasions, but is very familiar with East Turkestan and its people. Mr. Ben Lawson is a former U.S. Army officer, retired, and he's here on as an independent researcher.
Thank you, Prime Minister Boudiar, and thank you, President Yagma, for inviting me here to speak today. In my day job, I'm a strategist for the U.S. Air Force, and in that capacity, I do some thinking about America and East Turkestan. Now, I'm not here today speaking for the U.S. government or the Air Force, and I certainly can't speak for the people of East Turkestan, but I will speak as a retired U.S. Army officer, as a strategist, as someone who's worked for some time with the government of the People's Republic of China, as an assistant army attaché in Beijing, and as an American citizen. Today, as we commemorate the United States recognition of China's ongoing genocide, I'd like to take a minute to explain why East Turkestan is important to America and to other democratic nations. When I started to speak on this issue 4 years ago, I often found myself having to explain who the Uyghurs were. I do think most Americans finally understand that the Chinese government is committing atrocities against the Uyghurs and other peoples in the Uyghur country. But I think it's important that we understand why, and it's critical to learn what we can do about it. The PRC is a dictatorship that lacks the freedoms many Americans take for granted. Freedom of religion, expression, and the press, and due process and rule of law. When the PRC's dictator determines that any particular group of people will be imprisoned, they are. This happened to tens of millions during Mao Zedong's Great Cultural Revolution. It happened after the Tiananmen Square massacre, and again to suppress the Falun Gong. Since 2017, China has imprisoned large numbers of people in East Turkestan without cause. It is no coincidence that along with ordinary Turkestanis, China has imprisoned the artists, activists, and bearers of culture. We've seen this before. Under the Hitler regime, apart from the dedicated engines of mass death, the Nazis also worked, tortured, and starved to death untold numbers of victims. When you falsely imprison people, torture them in the prison camp, they die. And that's what the PRC is doing. Truly, these are concentration camps. Such state-sanctioned murder is particularly heinous, but was only part of Xi Jinping's inhuman program. Across East Turkestan, Chinese communists repress religion and level houses of worship. They separate families and re-educate children to adopt Han Chinese culture and language, and the women are forced to marry Han men, all under the watchful eye with the world's most intrusive surveillance apparatus. Even kitchen implements carry barcodes lest they be taken up against the Han. There's no overstatement to say that the whole country has become a ghetto, much as was employed during the Holocaust. So what is it that China seeks? It seeks a people deracinated, so disconnected from their culture, religion, and language that those with any memory of their country are long since dead. And the very idea of having their own country has become unthinkable. A people so docile that they do not seek prosperity or even freedom, but work at Han-assigned factories for their stinting portion. A people uprooted in their own land, separated from their heritage, and utterly dependent on their human masters and gods. This is why the PRC uses torture alongside Chinese language instruction. They want the land, and they will not tolerate the owners of it to remain. As a Jew, I feel a special duty to remember the Holocaust and to fight against it ever happening again. This means doing what I can to repair the world, and in this case, means keeping faith with a nation under threat. From decades of learning about China, there's one thing that I have observed that I want to tell my fellow Americans, something that took me a very long time to understand. This people under threat, under torture, dying, being forced to learn the Chinese language and abandon their own customs, this people is not Chinese. Their culture, their religion, and their language are not Chinese. In every way, at their core, who they are is not Chinese. They are Uyghur, Kazakh, Kyrgyz, Uzbek, and Tatar, and their country is called East Turkestan. Americans know that the destruction of East Turkestan is unacceptable to us, even as Americans in years past knew that Hitler's genocide against the Jews and other victims was unacceptable to any decent human being. But we also know, pretty sure we're not going to war against the People's Republic tomorrow. Unless Xi Jinping decides to attack first, no foreign army is coming to the rescue. But we know what Xi is doing and we oppose it. It is anathema to us. We have condemned it and we will always condemn genocide. We have seen how Xi brought low once proud Hong Kong. We have seen his perverse and unconscionable no-limits agreement in support of his lackey Putin's invasion of Ukraine. His continued and fulsome support as Russia deliberately bombs and terrorizes innocent civilians. It's these atrocities that Xi supports, and that's why we cannot remain still and silent as he drags the world into ever broader wars. As we learned at Munich, negotiating with dictators never works and can never appease them. It just makes them want more. China's masters have been absolutely clear. The existence of democracy anywhere in the world is a threat to dictatorship everywhere. Therefore, let us continue to act together. The Congress of the United States and parliaments and legislatures across the democratic world must recognize the genocide of the government of the People's Republic of China against the people of East Turkestan. They must recognize that East Turkestan is a captive nation. They must continue to legislate and tighten enforcement of laws like the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act, designed to ensure that our money isn't fueling the PRC's campaign of death. We cannot, in good conscience, continue normal trade relations with the People's Republic of China. There is no longer any portion of Chinese society that is not subject to the demands of the state. No part, we can be sure, is not complicit with the PRC's crimes. Making money is no excuse for supporting crimes against humanity. We must stop funding it. Let us instead provide support to East Turkestan, similar to that which we give Tibet, in the hope that one day they might recover their homeland. Like the Jews during the Holocaust, East Turkestanis comprise some tens of millions of people and in dire straits. Therefore, finally, let us remember the people of East Turkestan and not forget. Our free press is telling this story. Let's help them to tell it. Pass it along on social media. Don't be numb to it. You can act. Students and young people, Muslims, Jews, Christians, and all people who care for freedom and human rights, this is the time to organize and support East Turkestan. It won't be easy. China is powerful for now. But who would have thought after the Holocaust, just 3 years later, Jews would establish their own homeland? And just last year, the wisest among us were predicting the imminent collapse of Ukraine. They were all wrong, as are those today who would rather look away. East Turkestan can be free because East Turkestan must be free. So let us walk together today, step by step, and make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you again, Ben. Thank you for everyone that were here, to the journalists, to the other distinguished guests. As we mentioned, there's only one way forward for the East Turkestani people. And time, tragically, is not on our side. At this very moment, the genocide continues. At this very moment, millions of our people are still locked up in concentration camps. At this very moment, thousands of our women are facing rape. At this very moment, over 850,000 children are being forcibly separated from their families. At this very moment, millions of East Turkestanis are still working as slaves in Chinese factories. We are only trying to survive. We're only trying to exist. We want nothing more. We don't want Chinese territory. We don't want a part of China. We only want our own country back. We only want our dignity, our freedom, our independence back. And we can't do this alone. We can't. Sadly, we don't have the resources nor the strength. That is why we implore on governments who have the strength, who have the resources, who have the power to support us, to help us in any way and every way possible. The people of East Turkestan have never, not even for one day, given up their struggle to regain their freedom, to regain their independence. And it is because of that, because they're unwilling to give up what is their right, that China is implementing the most horrific genocide of the 21st century and after the Holocaust. So we published a very extensive report addressing all the lies that China propagates, addressing all the games that China is playing, and addressing the truth about East Turkestan. It's over 300 pages, so it's quite extensive. Today, we just gave everyone a brief summary of what it contains, a very brief summary. And hopefully, we will publish it as a book in the coming weeks. And we encourage everyone to get a copy. It's free of charge, especially politicians, lawmakers, and journalists, to learn the truth. And we hope that you can help us in opposing this genocide, in opposing this imperialism that has happened in the 21st century, by at the very least learning the truth and promoting the truth about East Turkestan. Thank you.